Hi, everyone. Welcome to Choosing a Different Future with Siris Rivas. I am Siris Rivas-Verdejo, and I have a wonderful guest, one of my good friends, dear people in my life that I'm so lucky to have in my life, Karla Johnston-Krase. And Karla Johnston-Krase is a wellness coach. She's an Access Bars facilitator. She's a yoga instructor. She's a mom of magnitude. And she's really passionate about empowering women and families who feel a little achy about their bodies, but a lot of tools to empower and thrive with their bodies, their soul, their lives, their relationships. And I've also gotten the honor and privilege of getting to meet her family, and how her family works is really unique and amazing, and I'd love for her to talk about that as well. She has 3 wonderful daughters, an amazing husband, and how they all create together and be together is pretty wow. So without further ado, please, Karla, say hi to everyone on the show.
There we go. Now I'm unmuted. Hey, everyone. I'm Karla. Siris, thank you so much. Wow, that was a really introduction. Yeah, thank you. Like to hear that. Sometimes I like to hear that as
well, and one of the things that we've talked about a lot is really acknowledging ourselves, right? Like that a lot of us were so busy giving to other people and worrying about other people as moms, as therapists, as coaches, as partners, that it's like, are we willing to actually acknowledge the gift that we be and have that simultaneous gifting and receiving? Like, you know, it's not only about giving. And we actually can give even more, in my interesting point of view, just an interesting point of view, when we're willing to receive more, when we're willing to acknowledge our gifts and capacities. And you have so many, my friend. So let's start somewhere. So, you know, how did we find each other? I think you reached out to me a year ago, was it?
Yeah, it was probably a year, a little more ago. Like I'm always looking like what else is possible? What can I add? Who else can I add to my life? And it's not just for me, it's for my family and for my kids as a parent through birth and adoption, transracial family. And I'm just looking, and I think I searched something in access consciousness specifically for kids, and boom, there you were. And I watched one of your YouTubes and I was like, that energy, you know, I want more of that. And then I binged a little bit on your videos, and then I just reached out. I didn't hesitate, which is great. Like I will say that I really don't hesitate usually in the first, like, boom, like I love like reaching out to people. And then sometimes I feel that, and I'm more and more aware that is not really my world.
But how great is it? Because that's already something that's different about you, is that a lot of people will hesitate to choose when they like are lit up about somebody or interested in learning more. And you're like, let's go, let's find out more, let's connect. And what's the worst thing that could happen? Oh, they don't message me back. They say no. Like, that's it. Like, it's really not, it doesn't have to be a big deal. But let's back up a little bit. So you said that your family, you have a family of adoption. You said a term that I don't hear very often. Did you say transracial?
Transracial.
Can you explain that for people who haven't heard of that before?
A lot of times in the adoptive community, when we adopt children of another race, transracial is used. So we are white. My children, 2 of them were born in Ethiopia. And so we're just, it's interesting, like to some people we're a very different family, and yet I think our kids have been around all families of all races and genders and mixes, and how family comes together, even biological birth, adoption,
blended
families, blended. We even say chosen family because we have chosen family members, and we know others who, you know, are family, and no document needs to say that.
So that's really beautiful.
They've always been exposed to that.
And what a gift is that, for them to have that exposure and experiences and the ease with it of being like, yeah, there doesn't have to be any one way that family can show up, that family can be and create and all of that. That's so cool. Wow. And so do you mind talking a little bit about your your idea to choose to adopt, you have a biological daughter, your oldest daughter is your biological daughter, and then other families would have been like, all right, we can have kids biologically, let's just keep going with that. So what kind of led you and your husband, who's also just this lovely being, I'd love to talk about what y'all have created together as well. Like what led y'all to choose to adopt and also do international adoption versus domestic? Because there's a lot of different options with that too.
There's so many adoptions, and a lot of it just can't be explained. I am aware that there's a moment in my childhood. I grew up in a village of 200 people, and it was very small. And I remember one day there was no school, and I went to the playground. And another girl was there who I didn't actually know very well. She was a couple years older, and we ended up playing on the teeter-totter, one of those old teeter-totters. And I don't know how or when, but she just told me she was adopted. And my family knew that. I didn't know that until that point. And I remember her like asking her, well, what is that? And she was explaining it. And I left that playground that day with the idea, like, I'm going to adopt someday. And I mean, what I knew, what I didn't know, and that stayed with me. And throughout my life, I've had many different jobs and careers. And one was directing a shelter for homeless and runaway youth. And I remember sort of in that moment being, this grow family in various ways is still there. And I wasn't in partnership or anything. And then I ended up, there was just a number of places where I found myself, and that just was part of how I knew I would grow family. And then we had Sylvia, and it was a very easy pregnancy, and easy, like so much of it was easy. The birth was complicated actually, in that moment. And
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, we went to the birthing center, and this whole idea, like I labored at home and all these beautiful things I had chosen. And then it was a very, my midwife was like, we're going to have to go to the hospital. She's reached, your water broke. And I was like, is there any way we can stay here? She was like, it's not going to be possible. And she had had a similar experience when she had twins. So off we went to the hospital, and the whole experience just changed. I just remember bright lights and people in my room and always asking me if I wanted a drug. And I remember feeling very confused. And then I just turned to Ben and my partner, and I said, I don't get it. Like if I were not here and I were am I in any more pain? Because I didn't know it was my first child. But am I in any more pain than I would be if I were in the birthing center? And then I got a no from the nurse. And I was like, okay, well then I'd rather be more alert, because the drug that they wanted to give there were options I could choose. I needed to have a cesarean. Mm-hmm. And then I remember being in the delivery room, and this sense of, it was very different. And I remember just leaning on the nurse, and she was sort of like, and I was like, I hope this is okay. And I'm leaning on her and just sort of choosing what I still felt like I needed. And our midwife actually brought back into that moment when Sylvia was born from my belly through cesarean. She sang a Buddhist birthing song to just sort of bring back, I haven't told the story in a while, to just bring back what I, in that moment, was feeling was lost. And that was that birth story. And
wait, so hold up, because that's a really poignant wow moment right there. So what does a Buddhist birthing song sound like?
I don't even remember, other than how something can just we can do it ourselves, or something can bring us there. Music, words, silence, nature brings you back to the now. And that was, she brought us back to now. It doesn't matter how this is turning out, how she's coming into the world. This is happening. She's coming into the world, and you have been carrying her in your belly, and here we are. And it was so, so beautiful. We actually, I don't know where it is right now, but we had those words printed out and had that just sort of right by her.
Well, I'm gonna ask if you could find that. That would be great. I think some of our viewers might want to read that, and maybe they'll use it themselves in the future, or they can gift that to somebody else. But the energy of that, of choosing something different in that moment, where other people would go into the trauma of it more.
Yeah.
And you
Well,
chose something different. That's amazing. And thank you for your midwife who thought to
yeah,
do
she was
that.
amazing. And we had this midwife shift change while we were there. And that was great. And Ben was a great advocate. And, there were many things that we did in that moment. And I will say, like, I made so many choices there, and I acknowledge that. And then what I'm aware of, which is sort of contributing to a lot of the work that I do today, is I really went into the wrongness of me and my body. And, what did I do wrong? I had all these things and these points of views, which then I, really held in my body. So then I had just a period of ovarian cysts and miscarriages, and we had revisited the idea of adoption, not as a backup plan, which people say, which I just feel like is, because I think it, however you choose to grow your family, you choose to grow your family.
Mm-hmm.
There was a moment where third miscarriage, and I had this moment like, oh, I am not looking for another pregnancy. I'm looking to grow my family. And there are many ways. And then it was sort of like, ping, yeah, Karla, remember that? In my head, after running the shelter for homeless and runaway youth, I had in my head, like I would have, one or two kids. And then I would adopt like an older child, maybe tween teen, because I was very aware that, there isn't a lot of options for them.
They're not really getting adopted, a lot of them at that point.
They're
Yeah.
not. Sometimes their best option is someone like John, end up with a probation officer. Right?
Karla's referring to our earlier guest. I think
Yeah.
is our second episode of our show. Yes.
John Ashford.
Mm-hmm.
So go watch that show if you haven't. It's amazing. So just fast forwarding, there's so much in there that could be told, but all of a sudden, like I had a surgery to remove the ovarian cysts, and everything was clear. And my doctor was like, go, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to carry a pregnancy full term. And at that moment, Ben and I just looked at each other and went like, we're all in. We already made the choice, how we were going to grow our family. And so we did. And then we were in the adoption process for one child, and it was Sylvia. We had thought about adopting two, like another child in the future. And everything was like, oh, what could Sylvia handle? Who was like 3 at the time. And then 3, 4. And Sylvia was in the back of the car one day. We were driving. She was imagining, she said, Mom, what would it be like if we adopted 2 brothers or sisters?
And I love when a kid does that, because here you are, you're wondering what they can handle. And a lot of times it's actually, and we've talked about this. So Karla and I have had a lot of conversations about parenting and our childhoods and using different energetic modalities to create more ease with children and families. And so we can pop some of those videos on as well for y'all to check out. But here's the thing is that like a lot of times what we've talked about is that like a lot of times the parents will say, oh, this is about what the best is for the kid. But it's really not asking from a space of actually getting the awareness. It's already coming from a lot of conclusion and limitation. Like, oh, they can only handle this much, or this is what I can handle, but I'm going to put it on my kid, like, and say, oh, they need more stability, or they need this, when it's really, I need this, but I'm not willing to say I need this. So I'm going to say it's my kid that needs it. And then when we're willing to actually ask, like you did, okay, I wonder how much you can handle. I wonder what would work for our family, and really ask from a space of, what are all the infinite possibilities here? The kids will often let us know in different ways. And I love, I'm not the least bit surprised knowing Sylvia.
No, Sylvia. Yeah.
That she was like, this, how about this? I'm okay with it. Now, so you can't say that I'm not okay with it now. Now it's on you if you're willing to choose it.
And she was the messenger. Like, she would go to the mail carrier would come to our door and she goes, hi, we're adopting. I'm going to have a brother or sister, maybe 2. That's like how she greeted the world. Aww. And just was like, she was so excited about just all of the unknowns. So we ended up opening the process to more than one child. My girls were born in Ethiopia. How that happened, I don't know that I actually can, like Ben and I sometimes talk about that process, and it's different for both of us. We worked with a really great agency that brought a lot of questions to us to help us really tap into what was going to work for our family. Because if you don't choose for your own family, like you're not
really effective
for the child or anyone else.
Yeah. It's not really going to work for everybody involved.
So we looked at domestic adoptions and gravitated to international.
What are some of the questions that they asked you so you can get clear on what was going to work for you and your family?
Yeah, I'm not even sure that I remember. I think that they just, our case manager was just really encouraging us to think like what was going to work. And, here's, and they worked with domestic and international adoptions. I think that there was a part of me, I don't speak Spanish a lot, but I was bilingual at the time and had spent time in Latin America and in Spanish speaking communities in the United States. And so there was sort of this pull. And, but then it was interesting that there were countries that we weren't able to adopt from. You either need to have no children or be infertile, or there were qualifications that we just didn't fit, or a certain age. Then at the time, we looked at what countries are ethically like doing adoptions well, like advocating for the children in the country. And Ethiopia happened to be one of them at the time, where things seemed to be going well. And and there were other countries we looked at too. And I don't even remember the moment where all of a sudden Ben and I just found ourselves in a conversation, just speaking about Ethiopia. And that being it. And we were sort of like, well, have we just made this decision? It's kind of how we got engaged too. Like we were talking one day about our relationship and then went, wait a minute, are we engaged? Like, what are we doing here?
I love the ease and flow of it. Yeah. So if I'm hearing you correctly, like it's really about asking a lot of questions about what you'd like to create as your family, in what way you'd like to create your family. And then also what kind of is pulling at you? So, you love to travel. You had already been in Latin America and doing a lot of different things. And we can totally talk about that. I loved hearing about your experiences and everything with that. At the same time, it's also like looking at who's already in your family. Did you look at beyond your immediate family? Like, were you asking questions about how it would impact your extended family, or was it more the immediate, and then you realize later on like how it would the implications for your extended family, like your parents and your siblings and things like that?
That's a great question. I don't know if I did so much, which is interesting because I'm often thinking about everybody else or have fallen in that pattern before. And in this process of adoption, the greater awareness that I think I had, like I was questioning, wow, like we're white, am I damaging? I remember that running through my head, like, am I damaging children by bringing them into another culture, another language, another race? And and what
awareness have you gotten from that now? Like, where are you at with that now?
I spent a lot of time in post-adoption where my body just was like shutting down because I really was hiding and thinking I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't good enough. There was a lot.
After the girls that you had, the two girls that had just come from Ethiopia. So you're already a family of 5. So this is when you say post-adoption, you mean like they're home. Right. You were raising them. They're transitioning. They're sleeping. You're building that bond and rapport with them. And so you are in parent mode, and yet at the same time you are hiding.
Yeah.
So definitely. Who exactly were you hiding from?
I think when I look back now, all of a sudden, like parenting was challenging in those moments, and I was very aware of how different this move was. Different language, different smells, different culture, different everything. There were noises, like a fire truck would go by and the girls just leapt into my arms and clung and shook, or a dog would bark, and just. So then, I dove into researching everything, and this is before we traveled as well. on adoption and adopting from another country, another race, on trauma, on all of these transitions. And we had had a lot of help from our agency. So I had all these sort of expert opinions over here telling me what was going on. And before I thought, hey, I was doing pretty good as a mom with Sylvia. And now I was like, I am just a horrible mom. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know. Like I felt like I wasn't enough, which I was.
Yeah. And
but
you are, but how many parents do we know have that even with their
Oh.
biological kids? You know, they don't have the complication of adoption internationally or otherwise, and they're going into, I'm not enough.
So much.
So what helped shift you from the hiding and thinking that you weren't enough to actually acknowledging the gift that you were as a parent and to these girls?
Yeah. Well, I'll say that, you know, one of my biggest fears in that moment, I think, was the fear of being judged, but judged by the Black community, judged by anyone who's a person of color. And those were there.
Like me?
Like you. and those judgments, and I had heard them, and they were there, and they were vocal, and yet there was so much more of every voice as well. And it was sort of what I was filtering, and it was my fear sort of bringing in one. And
so what you're saying is that there were a lot of people that were actually, there was a mix of opinions, but because your point of view was to judge yourself and worry about you not being enough, then you kind of focused in on the negative ones when there was a bunch of other people's points of views as well. And some of them were gratitude and kindness about your choice.
Yeah.
From people of color and otherwise.
Yeah. And
it's so interesting because their point of view will like kind of focus in on the things that'll match our original conclusion.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, there could be 10 beautiful people here, you know, just sort of like, and one over here, and this is the one, you know, like
you'll fixate on
the one that I just was like heavy, you know, and at the time, like, what if heavy is a lie? You know, light is truth. Yeah. And but I remember like again, that sort of like reach out, working with my kids' hair and skin. I had read a lot, and I had just asked anyone, all of my friends, African-American, like, help me, please, you know, and they were teaching me how to braid and products to use. And we had some friends who were Ethiopian who came over in the first couple of weeks and were just cooking. They were amazing. They just came into the house and just started cooking all these things that would, you know, be familiar and nourishing to the girls and engaging. And it was such, I just remember that moment also being like, more of that, please. Like this space of non-judgment, the space of grace, the space of everything and all things that they were just coming into our home. And
also your willingness to reach out to them and that bravery that it took to do that. Like a lot of families would, maybe they'll be out and about, but they wouldn't necessarily be willing to reach out to the ethnic groups that their children are coming from. So that's huge because I've worked with a lot of kids in foster care that have been adopted, all the different family dynamics with my work. And so I just want to acknowledge you for that. Like that's one of the things that I think you don't get how different it is, because a lot of people will just be like, okay, I'm just going to do the basic needs and not necessarily the cultural and linguistic aspects of who they might want to learn about and be and just know about. And then they can also add on other cultures as well, obviously, which I know that you and Ben do. Just being willing to do that, and then really realizing that a lot of people are willing to contribute to you and are so grateful. It's like, thank you for taking care of our kids. And it really is it's all of our kids. And these just happen to be two of them. Like, that's so beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. And and it's good to have those reminders because I can forget that. And I, when I pause, I can really acknowledge that, like that was big, reaching out. And I would be in the park playing and I would just go up to someone and say, I love your daughter's hair. Can you tell me, like, and I remember the first time someone came to me, or she said to my daughter, she said, hey honey, who does your hair? And she said, my mama. And the woman looked at me and she said, that. That's all she said. You're doing all right. And then I just asked her more questions.
Respect.
Said, yeah. And I just said anything. Well, and I was told, it's interesting how we can buy these, you know, what comes in. And I was told that as a white parent of a Black child, like, you better learn how to take care of hair. and you better learn how to take care of skin. But it was sort of like a you better, like, and it was, instead of like, why wouldn't we do this from a place of
Like
love and
assuming you
care?
probably wouldn't.
I know. Yeah. Right. So yeah, so that was a huge learning curve. And I've sought, people in our lives that look like us because they exist, and yeah, but I do find it interesting how all along I've had this sense that we're so unique, and yet we're so the same, like we are one. And so
yeah, I can definitely speak to when I go to visit your family. I've been in your house, and it feels like a family. There's not like anything like alarm bells going off or anything like that. Like, and I've been in a lot of families' homes, and it's just like, oh, the ease. It feels like a haven for anybody. That's the other thing that I love about your house, is that like anybody's welcome. It's like, hey, show up, be you. And the kids are really at ease with having guests coming in and out, and they have their own spaces, and they're creative in all these different ways. And you can see, just like any family, how the kids have their things that they have in common, and then they have the things that distinguish them. Their different gifts and capacities, their different interests, and you are nurturing each of them, and you're not trying to glom them all together, just like hopefully any parents wouldn't try to glom any other kids together. Like, it's like they're each individual personalities and beings. But the sense of like anybody can come to your house isn't always present in other homes. And I think that that's one of the things that is unique about your family, that maybe because of how you've chosen to create your family, there's still this like open door to, and who else would like to join?
Yeah, we had a little bonfire in our backyard on Saturday night, I think it was, and it was fun.
Yeah.
It just
I'm sorry to have missed it this time.
I know you missed it. But it was again just a moment to pause and go, oh my gosh, look at all these cool people in our lives. And some people came and were like, oh yeah, like, oh, and they didn't know each other, but then my brain's always connecting. So to connect people in different places, and it was fun. But I just want to say and acknowledge, like, one of the things that I think drew me to you, Siris, is that I do, like, I dream, I wonder, I vision a world or a future for all children, not just adoptive, but I'm very in tune to just all of the, like, I'm considered a trauma-informed parent, and I've done so much research around that. And it was so valuable to step into that. And it was so valuable then also to step into just recognizing what secondary trauma, or these things that have names, can be when we're caring for others. And more, like, I see the possibility of a space where we can, it's more than, you can hear a lot of the conversations about creating space for conversations and people and different things. And one of the things in the trauma-informed parenting they talk about is creating a container. And when I heard that container, I was like, like it kind of was like, because the information, I have nothing else, like, it felt restrictive. And I felt like I wanted more space. One of my girls in particular is very full of life and boisterous, and those same characteristics, like, that I want to flourish, are the ones that can kind of like, I struggle with. And putting her in a container not gonna work. And it was actually, I've used a lot of tools from yoga and Ayurveda, the sister science. It's just really about self-care. Like, how do we nurture our bodies? And one of the big things is like this concept of ama. And ama is a word from Sanskrit, from Ayurveda, that is that which cannot be digested. Right. And
or
so
that which cannot be put in a box, or like,
right, or put in a box.
It's too big.
And those two things, they go together.
I love that. I'm going to have to remember that one.
I'm always thinking about ama, because when I felt like my body was falling apart, it was just me not listening to my body, and me not digesting life, experiences, emotions. It was just sort of me staying in this resistance and world of judgment of what was right or wrong or good or bad, or how I had to do it this way or that way, or should be or shouldn't, and what my kids should be or shouldn't be doing. And there's so much in there that was contracting. And Amma is just like sludge, like it can show up in the physical body and the energetic being. It's just, I just see it as sort of, sometimes I even have these images of just, and I see that too when we take all the research from trauma, which is so valuable and in many ways, but when we take all the expert opinions and now we're trying to create this container, it's almost to me like it's limiting, because it's saying, it's disempowering as what it feels to me. My point of view is that's disempowering when I say this child has trauma. This is what I should expect. This is what I'm going to project. This is what will likely happen. So every time there's a behavior, I had a tendency in that beginning to go, oh my gosh, and jump to so many conclusions.
So what are you choosing different now? Like what's it look like now that you're not trying to put your daughters in containers, or yourself as a parent in a container? Like how does that process look like now when those behaviors show up? What do you choose that doesn't put them in a container, or you?
I do choose allowance, and I will often just take a breath and I feel myself expand out. I'm usually running some questions through my head.
What are some of those questions?
Yeah, it's what can I choose here? What can I be here? Often, like I don't do this one often in the moment, but later I'm like, okay, what's right about this I'm not getting? Mm-hmm. What information am I getting from my body through this experience? Because I often will feel sort of the contraction when there may be something happening. It's really letting down my barriers. And I've also noticed that our bodies really like to have some support in digesting life and food and emotions. And so it's not rigid, and it looks so different for each kid. Mm-hmm. But, just some basics about tuning in. Like, it doesn't have to be X number of hours of sleep, but like, what is your body asking for? And
are you asking your kids too now? Like, okay, what's your body asking for? And do they actually have an awareness that they can tell you or express you in a different way than words?
Yeah. So they've been doing this with me now for 4 years or more. So 5 years. And they now, like, I have to back off a lot. Like when I can see or perceive or have an awareness of kind of what may contribute. And then I just have to say, I ask questions, and they're going to choose it or not choose it.
I think that's huge right there. Like, I definitely don't want to gloss that over. Like, that gives them space to actually have their awareness. So that's one of the things that even as a therapist or a friend or a daughter or family member, like a lot of times we're really aware of what's possible for somebody else, somebody's body, somebody's life. And then for us, we might want to go right in and tell them what awareness we have, what we know is possible, instead of asking them a question instead to empower them to have what they know, to know what they know is true for them. And I've seen you do this with your daughters where you're like, hey, what's your body require right now? And they sit with it and then they're like, oh, this. And you'd think that it would be all ice cream and cookies and being outside all the time, or, not doing their homework, but they know what it's going to create.
Yeah.
Whether they do that or not. And so they choose the stuff that's actually going to create greater possibilities for them. When you start nurturing and asking these questions of them, and then you let them choose it, and they get to have the awareness of what that choice creates too. So even if they did choose the ice cream, sometimes the ice cream is exactly what their body required. And sometimes it was a sneaky way to see how they could get the ice cream. And then when their body doesn't react well to it, they're like, oh, so that's what happens when I choose something that isn't actually consistent with my awareness. Got it. Now I'm going to choose something else.
And at least it's their awareness, and it's not mom trying to control everything, which I still could do sometimes. And they're so clever now, because they'll call me out on it, and then I'll be like, you're right. Because I've been trying to empower them to know their bodies, because honestly, anyone who's experienced a trauma or I always say life disrupting moments, and we're going to have them, right? You know, like
Yeah.
right now in my life, like there are a lot of not so easy things. Like my husband has stage 4 cancer. My mom is aging and has Alzheimer's. We moved a couple years ago. There's still some things like trickling through with that, but my whole life, I think I've always sort of been like, what else is possible? How can there be more ease? And so ease and easy are different. How can I have, I'm really like, how can I have more ease, even if it doesn't feel easy right
Yeah.
now? And what I've seen is that the more I choose that, and the more I even just sort of be that for my kids and invite them into it, all of those projections and conclusions and what the experts say about adoption and trauma, I am not moving into making that true and real. And quite frankly, when I started reading that, I had this moment of like, what the, do I want my kids to feel like they're a victim the rest of their life?
To have that stamped
They
on
were
their
adopted?
foreheads and on their bodies,
Yeah.
realities for the rest of their lives. I mean, I had that even with just being a child of divorce. Because when my parents got divorced, it was when it wasn't like so common, like it was still kind of like a new thing. I think we were one of the first families to get divorced at that time. Now it's like everybody and their mother is getting divorced all the time. And depending on what community you're in. And so at the time there was a lot of like, oh, you're going to be like damaged for the rest of your life. That was projected at me and my siblings because your parents not only got divorced once, but then they have each of them got married other times and got divorced again. So it's like repeated trauma. That's how they would have put it too.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I bought into that as a kid. I totally was aware of their projection and expectation of me. And it was really challenging because then it's like anything that was difficult for me, I would put it, it's like, oh, this is difficult because I'm a child of divorce. Or it's difficult because my parents, da 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 da. Instead of being like, what if this is just life showing up right now? And what can I choose? It's going to have that
Exactly.
right now. What would be fun? What would actually like create something different for me? And so as soon as I started asking more of those questions as a teenager, because my parents got divorced when I was 11. So around like 14, 15 was when I was like, this is not fun for me. Like I was suicidal. I was really weighed down by all of this stuff that everyone was projecting at me and that I was aware of in the world. And that's what happens with a lot of our kids when we project this stuff at them. Like I really invite the parents that are watching this to really look at this and be like, do we want to send the message to our kids that they are the victims, that that they have limited options, that they can't create something different beyond what has shown up in their lives so far? Like your kids have absolutely chosen you and you've chosen them, and you're creating something different together. And so
Mm.
what if we could actually empower the kids that we know to know that they could choose something different, that like, okay, that was the past. Great. Now what would I like to create? And knowing that their choices now can create something different. Like that's actually the energy of this show. And I love that you and your family and your partnership with Ben like totally like embody that. Because you're like the walking talking, like y'all are choosing stuff different all the time, like different things all the time, like they're, with all the transitions and the milestones, you're having teenagers now, and other people would be like, teenagers, and there's a lot with it, but it doesn't have to be horrible and terrible and
No.
like
There are moments, like, don't get me wrong, like, but that's
oh yeah, there'll be moments.
there's so many different tools out there, and there's no right one, but you can pick tools that work in your life and ask questions. And it's not about like, I like to choose tools. I have chosen a lot of tools over the year that have been very empowering for me to be my own best caregiver and my own best healer and the creator of my own life. And I love these tools. They're the ones that tend to stick because then I can share them with other parents. I can share them with my kids. I'm empowering my kids to become adults someday, and then they get to choose whether they use these or not.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is, and I think sometimes we want the right thing, and there's not a right thing. Like each one of us is so unique, and our situations are unique, and our families are unique. And
It's constantly changing.
it's constantly changing, but I think whatever tool it is, like there's a part of me that gets like, it's simply whatever is going to help you drop some walls, like to just soften your body and be in your body. You know, a lot of the trauma research will talk about just trauma sort of taking you out of body. And I can sense that was true for me. I could sense, you know, my kids, like really like falling over everything into like really like a disconnection, and finding things that can bring that back. And there's so many things to do that. I love to just look at nature and the universe that's always here, and how we can kind of pull that in and receive, and how when you start being in your body, caring for your body, including your body, then it becomes clear, like, who else, what else do you want to add to your team or to your life? Like, it doesn't mean that you have to do it solo, because I think sometimes people misinterpret that and think, I got this. Well, there's another wall. I got this. You know, that's another barrier. And when you do that, like, you're keeping yourself limited too.
You're not actually
like when I contacted you, it's just like I got this sense like, oh my God, what can this woman add to my life? Because this was great, and something just lit me up here. So
thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it just is. I would love to ask if you, when you were sharing that about being 14, what was it at that moment? Like, do you remember like what changed, how your awareness?
There was this moment of like, enough, like, I'm done with this. Like, I'm done having messages sent through me, through my parents. You know, I'm done feeling like responsible for them and their whatever they're choosing. Like, I was the oldest of 3, and I was just like, I can't do this. Like, this is actually not going to work for me for the rest of my life. Like, I was seeing, like, I was about to go to a residential high school, and I was like, am I actually going to start looking at this being my job for the rest of my life, to be responsible for my parents and my siblings? Because you're writing essays. I had to write essays to go into that school and apply. And they're asking these questions about, well, they asked me, what would I actually like my life to be like? And it was one of the first times that I actually started looking at that. And it was really about me and my life, and not trying to glom everyone else's to-do list in my life's to-do list. And that's one of the first steps that I started taking to like own my life and commit to my life at like 14, 15.
Wow,
I had a conversation with my parents, and I was like, this can't happen anymore. This is killing me. I am suicidal. I'm depressed. I'm anxious all the time. It's not okay. And they needed some reminders periodically after that, but it wasn't as much on me as on my shoulders. And it really set the tone for me more and more and more, just detoxing all this stuff that I'd put on myself as the oldest, and being a good daughter to do something different. So it's the choosing it, like the choice. That's why I named this show the Choosing a Different Future, because I was like, there was this pivot moment where I could have totally let my family and everything define me for the rest of my life. I could see that path so clearly, and it really depressed me, and it really was so like, I was like, okay, so that's going to kill me. So I'm going to die if I take this path, literally. Like, and so I was like, okay, what if I chose something else? And there was all this guilt that came up. There was all this other energies, because I was worried about my siblings and how they would react, and was worried about not being a good daughter. But I also knew that that the world would be better somehow, somewhere. I knew, with all of my gifts and capacities, and I didn't even acknowledge all of them at the time, but the few that I was willing to acknowledge then, I was like, the world will be better if I'm here. So if I keep choosing this and I'm going to die, then that means that the world's going to be a little less shiny, a little less bright. So let me choose something where I'm here, contributing, you know? And that was that one moment that I can think of. And then there was a lot of choices since then, continuously, where you're constantly choosing something else, you know?
Thank you.
But yeah, thanks for asking, because I hadn't really looked at that in a while.
Thank you for choosing that. I mean, like, and at that, you know, age is sort of irrelevant anyway, right? But like, just to have that awareness and being willing to choose something else. And it could be a whole nother show, but like, when you talked about that guilt, I was like, oh yeah, because sometimes we have that awareness that we want to choose something else.
Yeah.
And when it involves, I don't know, my experience has been when it's family. Wow, like
There's a lot there. There's a lot.
there's a lot there.
So I guess you'll have to come back on the show.
Yeah. Oh, you're amazing. Thank you. Thanks for creating the show and for inviting me here. It's so fun to imagine a future, and you're inviting me to just really acknowledge. I think I shared with you, so I turned 49 this year, and I had this sort of like, wow, my life is so much greater than a decade ago.
How great does she look for 49, y'all? Can you believe, like, she does not look 49, right? Like, wow. Like,
we just need to move this stuff through. We just have to digest things. And honestly, like when we do, like, because seriously, like my body was falling apart. I looked older. Everything about me was aging. I woke up at 40 feeling more like I was in a body that felt 70. And hopefully at 70, I won't even experience that. It's sort of like the age reversing process with just some body care and being care. And, but I look back at that, and when I turn, I realized, sort of that time where I was saying post-adoption, when the girls came home and I just was feeling like shame and guilt and hiding, and I wasn't enough and wasn't really acknowledging. And by not acknowledging me, let me say that I was not acknowledging my kids. It's like there I was caring for everybody, but what I have learned is that when I acknowledge me and I care for me, oh my gosh, it just totally trickles into all the other bodies around me. So I couldn't even see, I could see it. I couldn't truly acknowledge or appreciate the way sort of this 3.5-year-old, ran into Lake Michigan, just like, whoa, and so excited, or, went 100 times around the little play set on the slide again and again and again, or would reach up for the rings on the bar and just flip. Like everything was full of life and energy, but I had, trauma. I'm not good enough. I don't, so I really couldn't acknowledge her either.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a lot of things that happened during that period where I had a birthday, and the amazing Ben and Sylvia had put this photo album where they asked lots of people, or people from all over the world and all parts of my life and history to send a birthday wish. Yeah. And they put it in this book. And I read it once, and that book has sat there until this past year when I turned 49. I went and I looked for it. I couldn't even find it. And I opened it up. And as I started reading, I read the first page, and I wept and I wept and I wept and I wept. And I had such the awareness that all the walls I had, just trying to get it right or thinking it wasn't right, that I couldn't even receive the gift of me. I couldn't even acknowledge where I had already shown up for people and where I was showing up for people, because I wasn't showing up for me. And so I dream of a future where every human being on this planet can really see and acknowledge the gift that they are, and care for this body, and let this being shine brighter, and just know that that really is a gift. Because no matter how much you're caring and giving and caring and giving, you could gift way more if you're willing to receive and give to yourself. And I don't have that perfect. There is no perfect. I would say,
me neither, girl.
We are evolution, and this is just always evolving, and it's a daily practice, which is why I love just simple health and self-care habits of Ayurveda, because it really looks at every day is a new day. Wake up every day. What questions can you ask? What does your body need to thrive today? What will bring you joy? Want to be present in your life? Then ask how to do that. Want to be present with your kids? Then ask how to do that. And it's not alone. It's receiving from others. It's receiving from God, source, universe, whatever your name is. It's receiving from nature. It's receiving from you.
Thank you so much, Karla. Yeah. I'm going to leave it at that now. I'd love that acknowledging the gift that we be, that it's actually going to allow us to be a greater contribution to everyone else. And it really also allows us to receive all the more. And we'll definitely have to continue this conversation in a different episode. But I really appreciate you being on the show and for making me all teary-eyed, y'all, for that with that question. I was not expecting that.
Well,
Yeah,
you're amazing. This space that you're
expectation.
creating, yeah, like you're creating now and for the future. And anyone watching this now, go back, watch other episodes because it's fun. It's amazing.
Yeah. Please go ahead and subscribe to our channel here. You can find Karla at discoveryourcenter.com. She's also on Facebook, and we'll put all that information in our description below. We're also going to have, we're going to have a whole bunch of other guests coming on, but if you have any suggestions for anybody that you think we should have on the show that would speak to the energy of choosing a different future, let us know, and you can go to choosingadifferentfuture.com. Thank you so much, Karla. Again, thank you everyone for watching this episode, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.